It's the Underdogs. We're back with you to talk some college football. I'm Jordan Brenner. That's Peter Keating. And Peter, there's no better underdog story this year than the Indiana Hoosiers. They improved to 7-0 after a stomping of Nebraska next week. And now we've got to talk about whether they can keep this run going and maybe meet in an undefeated matchup with Ohio State with 2 weeks left in the season.
So, look, Jordan, right now, Indiana has more offensive touchdowns than any team in college football. And it's keyed by the fact that they're averaging 7.65 yards a play. That's number 4 in college football, behind only Miami, Boise State, and Ole Miss. And you know what those 3 teams have in common? Superstar Heisman candidates, right? Indiana does not. Indiana just scores every way imaginable. They're bombing passes, they're screen passing, they're running. It's a fantastic thing to watch. It's a lot of fun. And I'll just say one thing. You and I both loved Nebraska coming into this season. Nebraska had not given up a single rushing touchdown before last week. They were giving up 11 points a game. I thought they were the best defense in the country. They got stomped. They got their heads handed to them. They gave up 5 rushing touchdowns to Indiana. Indiana was running all over the place and throwing all over the place. It's been a great season for this team.
Right. Nebraska, according to collegefootballdata.com, Nebraska had the 5th best defense in terms of efficiency going in the country going into that game and gave up 56 points to Indiana. Now, obviously, the big news for the Hoosiers is that Curtis Rourke, their quarterback, who was maybe playing himself into some Heisman conversation, injured his thumb, had surgery. He's definitely out this week against Washington. There's some optimism that he could return the following week at Michigan State. He's a 6th-year transfer from Ohio. Into the void steps Taven Jackson. He was on the team last year, started 5 games, alternated at quarterback with Brennan Sorsby a bit. Didn't do great, but he stepped in last week against Nebraska, went 7 for 8 for 91 yards. He's a better rushing quarterback too. He had 2 carries for 21 yards. He's also Trace Jackson Davis's brother, who you may remember from Indiana basketball, and now on the Golden State Warriors. So the question is, can Taven Jackson keep this thing rolling while Rourke is on the sidelines?
Well, against Washington, I think he can. He's a more mobile quarterback. Like you said, he had 21 rushing yards and 2 attempts. He's formerly of Tennessee, another guy in this trend we've seen. Quarterbacks who are good enough to be recruited by big schools don't get to play, then go play somewhere else and possibly do really well. I think the explosiveness of the Indiana receivers will tell, even with the backup quarterback in. I mean, Omar Cooper is a fun guy to watch. He's averaging more than 20 yards a catch. And I just want to say, Jordan, you know Elijah Surratt? Have you seen him play at all? Do you know what his nickname is for Indiana? He leads the team in receiving yards. His nickname is Waffle House. You know why?
Because he's always open.
He's open 24/7. That's right. And that brings up an interesting point. He used to play for James Madison. He's a transfer. Who else came over from James Madison to Indiana? That's right, the coach, Curt Cignetti, who's having probably the best year of all. This guy's a great coach. You know, Indiana's defense played amazing against Nebraska too. All these open field tackles, all this pressure on Dylan Raiola. Dylan Raiola, who we like, right, was pulled from that game. 3 interceptions, a fumble. He was not able to pass long. There was one guy, Ja'Cory Barney on Nebraska, who had 8 catches for 32 yards. That's what they did. So the defense holds up. You got the explosive receivers. Why not? Why not let this magic run for another week, Jordan?
Let me hit you with a couple other numbers since we're going in that direction, okay? Indiana, number 1 in overall offensive rank, according to Sharp College Football, their advanced metrics. They're number 1 in explosive drives, to the point you're making. Those are drives that average more than about 7.5 yards per play. They're number 5 in what they call drive rank. They're putting up points in every way imaginable. Now, their defense, still not great. 40th overall in defense, according to those metrics. But look, as you said, they held a pretty good Nebraska offense down. But again, what they did to Nebraska, Peter, Nebraska had given up more than 10 points only once all season, and that was in a 31-24 overtime loss to Illinois. So where they'd allowed only 24 in regulation that game. 56 points. So let's look forward, okay? You've got Washington at home this week, backup quarterback. Upset potential? Maybe. At Michigan State the following week, they hope to get their quarterback Rourke back. Then home for Michigan, and then the big one at Ohio State. Can they win these next 3 games and set up that amazing showdown?
Well, you know, Jordan, amidst all this conference realignment, the Big Ten doesn't have divisions anymore. It's
Mhm.
just the top two teams make the Big Ten title game. And Jordan, Ohio State has already lost, as we know, to Oregon. So I think this sets up pretty nicely. You know, that game against Ohio State for Indiana is going to be pretty titanic. Yeah, I think they're gonna. I think they can sustain it till that game.
And I think we've talked in the past. They avoid Oregon and they
Right.
avoid Penn State. That which is speaks to some of the trouble of this massive conference expansion and realignment because you're
Right.
going to have potentially multiple undefeated teams available to play in a conference championship game among other factors. But for now, it's pretty exciting that you could be talking about an undefeated Indiana team this deep into a season. Heck, we haven't even gotten undefeated Indiana teams a month into a college basketball season anymore.
This is the best Indiana season since at least 1967. Who ever thought the Penn State Ohio State game coming up right after Halloween would matter so much to Indiana? You know, that's what we're talking about. You're right, by the way. Once you get more teams in a conference than you can play in a season, you have some real trouble determining who the conference champion is. You know what I mean? So yeah, these mega conferences are causing some issues.
Right. So look, keep your eye on the Hoosiers going forward. They're up to 13th in the AP poll, and that may not even be fair, to be honest. They're playing better than that. But again, just keep the Curtis Rourke injury in mind. That could derail this whole thing.
Yeah, that thumb was gruesome. That thumb that he injured was bleeding. I think it involved a thumbnail. I don't think it was serious surgery, but surgery on a thumb is scary. So good luck. Get well soon, Curtis.